Alright, so in today's video, I want to talk about my settings and settings that I recommend for FPS, and just a bunch of other small tricks you can do to improve your gameplay in New World, from PvE to PvP and just general quality of life stuff. There's quite a few niche things you can do. So jumping right into it, one of the biggest changes to come from Season 10 is custom UI. So I'll show you when my game loads here. You can now fully customize your own UI, and there's a little bit more to this, and some really cool things you can do outside of the game, especially if you, for example, want to share or use someone else's user interface. And I will leave my user interface in the description below if you wanted to use it. So simply to customize your own UI, all you are going to do is go to your settings, go to game, scroll down until the HUD section. Hit the drop down and pick one of the presets. So you have custom 1, custom 2, and custom 3. So you can have 3 custom presets for all of your different kind of content. Now, below that, you can hit edit and you can tweak it to your heart's desire. Whatever you want to do, it's pretty much possible here. The only thing you can't do is custom crosshairs. You might notice that my crosshair doesn't exist. Now, that is because there is a small trick we can do to get custom crosshairs, which I will be talking about in a little bit. So you can see I'm hiding my crosshair right now. But we will talk about custom crosshairs a little bit later. But first, I want to focus on the in-game custom UI section. So you can tweak this as much as you like. You can see my UI here. I've upscaled, for example, the buffs. I've also put potions under my health. Abilities are smaller and just to the right. Heart rates to the left. Everything's more centralized. I've put my raid groups to the right and loot and things like that. So you can get pretty crazy with customizing your UI. And you're probably thinking, hey, maybe I want someone else's UI. That is when you save it, and what you're going to do is hit Windows plus R. You're going to type ape data like this, and then you're going to go to the AGS folder, New World, save data, and you will actually see the direct JSON file for your custom UI right here. Now, depending on your account, you have a bunch of random numbers and strings on the end here, so I don't recommend just straight copying and pasting the entire JSON file. Instead, open it in Notepad or code or whatever you want and just copy the actual code. And I will have this in a paste bin below, so you can just copy all of this and paste it into your own custom layout if you want my user interface, if you like what you see, and then you can tweak things from there. Or if you have a mate's UI that you like or someone else's UI that you like, you can ask for their JSON file. You can copy and paste all the contents and then paste it into your own one like so. Simply save, go in game, and it will instantly be there under that custom layout 1 in the drop down. So that's a pretty cool thing you can do with the custom UI, especially if you want to share and use other people's. And in general, custom UI is a massive step up in just quality of life in New World in Season 10. It's pretty nice to finally have it. Now, some of the other settings we'll go over in New World, especially if you're new to the game, returning player, things like that. Things that are going to help you elevate your maybe competitive gameplay or just general quality of life stuff. Going down the list in the games tab to start off with. Camera shake you want off, vertical camera smoothing you want off. Tilt-based camera zoom can be nice if you're a melee player. This is just going to give you more FOV when you're looking down. As you can see, it gives you a crapload more FOV. As a ranged player, this isn't that good because it'll mess with your aim perception, which is a big thing when it comes to FOV. So I don't recommend that being on when it comes to a ranged playstyle, mages, bows, muskets, things like that. Scrolling down, Smartcast. Smartcast is a bit of a personal preference one here. You can either do on release, on activation, or off. Now, I'm a legacy player. I prefer doing it off, so I load my ability, then I shoot my ability. Or you can do on release, which is simply letting go of the key. Now, I really don't like this setting. I really am not a big fan of Smartcast. But again, this is a personal preference thing. You can try it, see if you like it, and if it's your kind of thing. That's one that isn't necessarily a must-do. Again, I'm a legacy player, but if you prefer a Smartcast, it's there. Tutorials, turn that off. You can also do color and enemy and ally tinting. I usually have my ally tinting off, but my enemy tinting on. This is obviously important when it comes to competitive PvP. It's easier to identify enemies and things like that. Scrolling down, mounts, mount following road, I actually don't like. Tap to mount dash is much nicer on the fingers, especially if you're running long distances. I really don't like holding down the sprint button the whole time, so you can do that as well. Map auto zoom is a nice one. So when you're in a settlement, it's going to automatically zoom in to the settlement so you don't have to zoom in manually. Some of the other HUD settings here is where we can get into custom crosshairs. This is probably one of the big ones that I get asked a lot. How do I have a custom crosshair in New World that you're seeing on screen right now? First things first, you may see that I have these blank opacity crosshair colors here. We have to go into the config to do this. Much like we did with our custom user interface at the start, we'll be doing something very similar. But before we do that, we need to hit this always show reticle to off to trigger it properly. So toggle that setting off in game. Now close your game. I'm not going to close my game because we're just doing this as an example. Then we are going to go back over to our ape data, Windows plus R, AGS, and then we're going to go to New World, save data, and you'll notice at the bottom here, I have 5 user settings files. Depending on you, you might have 1, you might have 3, or you might have 4, you might have a varying amount. Generally speaking, some of them are outdated, some of them old, some of them are new, but just in case, we're going to be applying this custom crosshair setting to all of them just to make sure it works. So we're going to go into the first one, and there's a whole bunch of jargon here. Well, don't worry about that, just hit Control F, and we're going to search up reticle. When you hit reticle, it's going to locate the reticle settings that we would be in game, and now we can change the actual alpha value, alpha being the opacity of our crosshair, which you can't do in game for some reason, I'm not sure why, to 0. So the first 3 values here is the RGB, this is the red value, the green values, and the blue values. And the last one is, of course, the alphas. So we're going to do that, and that's simply going to just remove the crosshair from our screen. So you're probably wondering, where does the custom crosshair side of this come in, which we will get onto in a second. First off, make sure you change it to 0 at the end, which is the alpha value on the reticle here. Do it on target color as well. And that's just going to be really easy to do. And you're going to repeat that in as many configs as you have. Generally speaking, around 3 of them are going to have this setting to change in. So do it to all of them to just make sure you're doing it right. And that's going to be pretty much the entire setting there. So just save out of it. You check the other ones. So we'll go reticle color, see if it's down here. Doesn't look like it's in this one. So, oh, we do not want to delete anything. Oh no, it is in this file as well. So it's also down here. We're going to make sure we hit that alpha to 0. Make sure you have the exact amount of decimal places as well. Otherwise it will bug out. So it is based on 7 decimal values. So make sure you have 7 decimal places. Closing out of that, saving that. When you go back in game next, you will notice that you have no crosshair. Now you obviously want a crosshair so you know where you're aiming. So what do we do about that? Well, that's where a really cool application called Crosshair X comes in. Crosshair X is a fantastic application that will allow you to create custom crosshairs. So I'm going to hide this crosshair I have on screen right now, open this app up and show you what it looks like. I will have my crosshair code in the comments or in the description. So if you like the crosshair I use, you can easily get it. So opening this, it instantly hits or opens your crosshair, which is quite nice. I added sound effects to this now, I didn't know that. So as you can see, it's loaded my crosshair and you can see it on screen. This is a pretty complex crosshair application. If you're wondering, it's completely within TOS. All it's doing is drawing a crosshair over your screen. Does nothing to the game at all. It is just like opening a PNG file and putting it in the center of your screen. It's same as doing a piece of blue tack on your screen, same as doing a piece of tape, whatever, whatnot. That's another thing that I do is, if you didn't notice, I didn't have Crosshair X open until just now, and you probably are wondering how I have the crosshair on my screen. That is because I actually use an OBS layer for my crosshair. This is going to get a little bit inception-y here, but I actually have a custom crosshair layer. You can see it here. So you can see I hide it and I open it, and that is because when I'm streaming, you guys need to see where I'm aiming, because I use something called a monitor crosshair. Monitor crosshairs are basically something that a lot of new gaming monitors have, and are really handy, especially when it comes to this things like hiding the in-game crosshair and using our own crosshair, is we can just use a monitor crosshair. So if you've got a new gaming monitor, look it up online and see if your monitor supports custom crosshairs, or monitor crosshairs rather, and how to turn it on. For me, I just have an extra button on the bottom that allows me to turn my monitor crosshair on, and that removes the need for me to actually use Crosshair X at all, so I can free up a little bit more resources on my PC. Now that said, Crosshair X is a very lightweight application. It's not going to make much of a difference anyways, but if you're like me, I'm going to do everything I can to get the maximum frames. which jumps into our next section. So I've done custom crosshairs, custom UI, how to share, custom UI. Now let's jump into FPS stuff. So when it comes to FPS in New World, there's really only 3 things I can recommend. Number 1, if you're on an NVIDIA GPU, it's 20 series or above, use DLSS 4. This is the transformer model that has the lowest visual loss and the highest gains. I run performance, I'm only on 1080p and it still looks great. You can go DLLA if you are feeling a little bit more quality over performance, but just keep in mind it is quite a drastic change on the scale, but any setting here is really going to give you a performance increase. Quality being probably the most optimal for balance between visuals and performance. And again, this is exclusive to NVIDIA GPUs, but if you are on an AMD GPU, you can use FSR. FSR is also pretty solid, it's just AMD's version of an upscaler, which will do kind of the same thing. And yeah, that's pretty much all that setting is. Now, the next setting, which you probably can't see here, or is grayed out for me, is DLSS frame generation. DLSS frame generation in New World, which is only supported on 50 series and 40 series cards, makes a massive difference. Especially the latest frame generation models have a very minimal loss in input lag, and they have a massive gain in FPS, especially in games like New World. You can get up to probably 700, 600 FPS if you're on a 50 series, and you can probably get around 400 FPS with frame gen on a 40 series. Now, it's important to keep in mind that, again, you will get a slight input delay increase, but especially when it comes to the 50 series frame generation model, which is to 4x, you get a huge FPS gain with minimal next to no input lag loss. Now, the 40 series version of frame generation, which is the 2x, I can't show it here because I have a 30 series, but the 40 series, which has the 2x frame generation model, is still good, but it will introduce a little bit more input lag than the 4x on the 50 series does. Next up is NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency. Now, there's a few things to note about the setting. It's going to massively increase your input delay, or reduce your input delay rather, but you will lose some performance. Now, I'm a competitive player, and input delay means everything, so I try to minimize that, and if that means I lose 10 to 15 FPS, that is, in my opinion, worth it, because you want the most, I guess, responsive inputs you can possibly get. So on plus boost is what I recommend. If you don't want to take the FPS hit, on is going to have next to no FPS hit while still getting a little bit less latency. And that's generally, again, I think this is an NVIDIA only setting, so this I don't think will work for AMD. But if it does, on plus boost is, you know, reducing it to the most, on is reducing it to like a little bit, but not reducing your FPS. FOV, that's personal preference. I play max, and I usually play max but zoomed in with my scroll wheel, so that's up to you. Now to the game settings. If you're using frame generation, like I just outlined before, you can run at maximum settings and get hundreds of FPS, which is quite nice. But if you are on a lower end system like me, you will notice the FPS loss on higher settings. But there's a really good setting setup that I use where I get a little bit of quality and none of the downsides of a performance hit, and that is running everything low but object details and texture details on high. This is what I recommend if you want a balance between quality and performance, as with these settings I lose maybe 5 FPS at most, as object details and texture details are not really performance based factors. They more rely on the actual, I think it's the memory of your GPU. So if you have, you know, a mid-range, a good GPU, these won't matter, as it's just going to be chewing into your GPU memory more than anything, not your actual performance. So that's what I recommend. And yeah, show FPS. You can obviously turn that on to check your FPS. VSync, turn that off. VSync is going to cause a lot of input lag. I wouldn't recommend that. There's one more setting that I would recommend in game, and that is the freeform movement. Freeform movement is a setting they introduced about 2 years ago now that massively changes the way movement in New World works. Now, if you're a legacy player or you're someone that's coming back since 2021 launch, this is going to be one of your biggest changes. It's going to completely change the way you play the game. old New World, you used to have a system where you had to have your camera in the direction to move that way. So for example, as you can see, I'm doing this backpedaling and shit, which in my opinion feels really bad once you get used to freeform movement. Backpedaling is with freeform movement off. You would literally have to face your camera in that set direction to be able to turn that way and run that way. Otherwise, you'll do the strafing and backpedaling. But with freeform movement on, you will be able to get a full 360 movement directional input just by pressing W, A, S, and D. This is one of the best settings in my opinion they ever added. It did reduce the movement skill gap, but at the cost of a way more fluid movement system. I don't mind it. So that's kind of the two things I would recommend. Now, camera direction for melee attacks, I would leave that on. That is going to feel really bad off. And now all these other settings in here, this is my sensitivities if you guys want to know them. It's 1440, 800 DPI. The self-correcting follow camera and obviously invert, you probably want those off. Healing, I don't know too much about healing. That's something for you healers to figure out. And that's pretty much everything in game. Now we can jump onto some of my external performance boosts that are outside of the game. So the first one is going to be something to do with input delay when it comes to multiple keystrokes in rapid succession. This is effectively a setting that is going to massively help your APM in New World. So if you're a competitive player, APM means actions per minute. Actions per minute means everything when it comes to, just generally playing fast and having a lot of inputs at once. In New World, that is quite crucial, especially if you're a movement-based player. You want to have the least input delay between keystrokes. This setting is going to help. It is very, very nice in New World, and it's one of the most unknown and underrated settings. So all you're going to do is go to your Windows and type keyboard, and it's going to come up as keyboard properties. You want your repeat delay and repeat rate to be set to short and fast. Now, an example of this is I'm just going to type in a browser to give you an example. So with this setting on, when I hold down the key, you can see that it types extremely fast. But when we reduce this setting, it's going to be much slower. I think it's this one actually. When we reduce this setting, it's going to be, I have to apply it. When we reduce this setting, it's going to be much slower. Never mind, it's still fast. I don't know why. But I think that's because I have it on an exit lag. But besides the point, this setting here is going to massively help your APM. If you think I'm bullshitting, try it for yourself. I can tell you right now, it is massively going to help your APM. Next up is GPU scheduling. So if you type GPU, go to graphics settings, and then go to change default graphic settings, put hardware accelerated GPU scheduling on, put optimizations for Windows games on, and then auto HDR. That's if you use an HDR display, I wouldn't worry about that. For these two settings, turn them on. That's going to give you a little bit of a performance gain. The next settings is the NVIDIA control panel or the AMD control panel, depending on which one you use. Usually there's a performance preset, which you can simply hit up here. But you also want to hit the advanced, and we're going to tweak a few things in here. You can copy my settings in here, so I'm just going to go global because it's a little bit easier. So I pretty much have everything either off, depending on what it is. Some things are on, so low latency is on. That's actually already done in game, so we don't need to worry about that. You can cap your frame rate in here. There's also quickly a little gimmick I want to note here, is when you cap your frame rate using the in-game setting, it's going to add input delay. I don't know why it does that, but if you cap it at 120, 240, anything that is capped using the in-game drop-down, it will cause input delay. But if you cap your frame rate in the AMD control panel or the NVIDIA control panel, it is fine. It won't give you input delay. So that is how you want to go about it if you cap your FPS. So definitely do not cap your FPS in-game. I don't know why it does that. It's just a weird gimmick that's been around for a long time that I've tested it. Capping your frame rate in game will give you input delay. Power management mode, prefer maximum performance, probably a notable one in here. Texture cache size, driver default, you don't really need to mess around with this. Texture quality, high performance is probably the other key one in here. If you want to get into the more specifics, you can just look at my screen and copy them there. Now the next setting is something called rebar. Rebar is basically a setting that's going to effectively overclock your GPU a little bit and get maybe 7 to 12% more performance out of it. Rebar is a setting that will not be on by default, depending, it might be for you. To check this, you're going to hit help up here and you're going to hit system, I think it's system information. and it will show a setting called rebar. As you can see, resizable bar is on for me. If this says resizable bar no for you, you want to go into your BIOS settings and enable it. Now, this is something you want to look up, obviously, before you go further ahead. And this is more of a technical setting. This isn't required. This is optional if you want to get a little bit more performance out of your GPU. All you need to do is go online, search your model and make of your motherboard, and look up how to enable resizable bar on it. Once you've done that, go into the BIOS, change the setting, go back into Windows, double check in the system information, the control panel. I believe you have a similar way to check on the AMD GPUs. I'm not sure entirely. But yes, turn resizable bar on. Once you've done that, we're not quite done. You need to go and download an application called NVIDIA. I think it's called, I have it all the way down in my downloads, NVIDIA Profile Inspector. So NVIDIA Profile Inspector is effectively an application that allows us to fine tune our settings a little bit further in our graphics driver. Now, don't mess around with anything in here that I don't mention, because it will mess up your graphics driver and you will have to roll back and reinstall. This is a very, very, dangerous panel to mess around with. So scrolling down, you will find the rebar feature. Now, don't change it in the overall base profile. What you want to do is you want to search up New World in the top left, and then you want to scroll down until you see resizable bar here, and you want to hit enable. Then on the second option, resizable bar options or R bar options, hit Red Dead Redemption 2 or XO1, sorry. At the second or third option, size limit, rebar size limit, set that to the Red Dead Redemption 2 option, which is got the 4 in it. This, after applying and restarting your PC, is going to give you around about, on average, a 7 to 12% performance increase. Now, there's a quick side note I want to mention in here before, I take that any further, is if you notice stuttering, if you notice any kind of stuttering at all with rebar on, turn it off. And you don't need to turn it off in the BIOS. You just need to go back into that NVIDIA Profile Inspector and turn it off in there with that resizable bar option. So that is what I quickly want to mention. But sometimes, on the contrary, resizable bar can actually help reduce stutters if you are getting them. It is a hit and miss and depends on the game and your specs. For me, resizable bar helps quite a bit. I get around a 7% performance increase with resizable bar on, which at the higher end is around 20 FPS or 10 to 20 FPS depending on the content, and can be a pretty noticeable impact. Now, that is largely all I wanted to talk about in this video, is the custom crosshairs and the custom UI being big portions of it. And of course, the other little niche tricks we had in here as well, some little performance increase things we can do. That pretty much covers most of it. If you are still getting performance issues, I highly recommend looking into the stability of your driver. Rolling back a driver can sometimes help. A lot of the later NVIDIA drivers tend to have issues. So if you notice that you're having a lot of issues graphically and FPS-wise and performance-wise still, and you know your PC is up to spec, try rolling back an NVIDIA driver and seeing how it goes there. And that's pretty much all I can recommend in terms of settings and FPS and things like that. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.